Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I am really excited for my conversation today with Emily Stark. After years in the career services industry, Emily peeled off to build Marketable Mama, a career and life transition coaching firm exclusively for moms, equipping each unique woman with the clarity, confidence, and captivating job search documents they need to thrive forward in their careers. Emily leverages a decade of motherhood with certifications in resume writing, life coaching, and the fair play method, which I'm excited to learn about, to fuel goal-focused coaching to support the whole mother. Welcome to the show today, Emily.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you.
Yeah. We'll definitely get to this fair play thing we mentioned just a moment ago, because I'm excited to learn about that. But before we get there in your current business, we're gonna go back in time. Take us back. So I know you're originally from the East Coast, North Raleigh, North Carolina. I can do the accent. So talk to us about educational choices you made, college, the why, the what type of thing. And then we'll get into your career path.
Right. Yeah. I'm so glad that you're asking this question, because it really plays into the work that I do, but I don't often speak about it. So I thought that I wanted to be a teacher for a very long time. In high school, I was in Future Teachers of America, and I just was really called to do that. And then I pursued that route, both in education and then also after college, started teaching a little bit. And it was really hard. I felt like some of the skills that are necessary to be a teacher were things that were really hard for me. And so I spent a lot of time kind of feeling a lot of pushback. And then luckily, I just kind of fell into career services, which is, it was a natural progression, but it just worked out that way. So I think a lot of times when I work with moms that are a little bit frustrated or confused, I really can empathize with them, because there were a lot of exciting pieces to teaching, and but it's good that I have landed where I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so you got your undergrad, bachelor's in education, and then a few years later, you went on and you got a master's of art in curriculum and instruction. So you definitely were, committed to this path as far as, an educational path, but you stayed in education. You just went to a different side of education.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of there were hints that would pop up that I needed to be in career services. So I'll give you an example. I was an English as a second language instructor. And so I worked with at a community college, and then it was kind of an adjunct to UCSD. And so all of these people were learning English so that they could get to some sort of next step, whether it be going back to college or getting their some sort of a certification for a job, etc. So I found myself talking to my students more about their next step. And I remember so clearly one of my students at the community college. This is when I first started working in this realm. And she asked me to help her with an upcoming interview. She was from Puerto Rico, and she wanted to land a job here. And so I was just so excited that she asked me, and I got really into it. And so I think things like that, that might pop up in work, that are little projects that may not even be within your normal scope of work, are, if you kind of lean into those and explore what you're feeling and pause for a moment, then they could be really exciting foreshadowing for your next steps.
I love that. I love that. Great advice. So I know according to the timeline I'm seeing here, you did teach English as a second language for a number of years, and then moved into career coaching with Ashford University towards the end of 2016. If folks aren't familiar with Ashford University, we know it here in San Diego, and I know they've changed their name and moved to like Phoenix or something like that. But what is that school, and talk about your work there?
It's an online university. So I worked with so many different people. Because of my background in education, I primarily worked with graduates with an education degree or liberal arts. And so there was a piece of career exploration, and then there was also resume support, and then also job search support. And then later on, I got into employee relations. So we would contact and build relationships with companies that would be strong employers for our students, and kind of create a student pipeline for those companies. And another kind of experience that came up in that work, I worked with a woman that just finished her degree. She was a mom, and she had been out of work outside of the home for maybe a decade. This was years ago, so I can't remember the exact timeline, but she was feeling a lot of pressure about her next step. And she had this degree, and of course the loans that she had taken out. And so she felt a lot of pressure to get a job, but she wasn't really sure how to position herself, and and what experiences that she could lean into in her resume. And so that conversation, we spoke on the phone. I can see myself speaking to her even now for over an hour, and just the transformation that happened within that conversation, just all the experiences that we pulled up, all of the excitement that she had toward her next step, and then the clarity that came up, and then the steps that we defined that she could go into. It was really exciting. And I definitely think, without a shadow of doubt, that this woman helped me to know that I would later create something. I didn't know Marketable Mama would be the name, but land into what I'm doing right now.
I love that. Awesome. So then you spent some time in the world of employee outplacement, almost 4 years as a career coach. That must have been a unique experience, helping people. I mean, that's a tough time for a lot of people, right? They've been potentially downsized, right? Or whatever word we want to use. And you're helping them, just as you've done before, find their next adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think this was my first exposure to what is now really well known and talked about openly, but toxic workplace practices, and just the hardship that can come, and emotional turmoil that can come from a professional experience that, isn't serving you or hasn't been done well. So there was a lot of the same kind of resume and preparing for their next step, LinkedIn, and networking and things of that nature. But I really got a glimpse into the life piece in this role. And then I later went back to earn a life coaching certificate, but that would have been really helpful for that position too. Because like you said, there's just, it's different than when you are coming out of college, and looking for a job versus, you are separating from your company. There's just a totally different, you're coming at it from a different starting block.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the decision, as you helped people transition out of their jobs into something else, the decision then to launch your own business. I know you've worked with over 1,000 people in the last close to 4 years since you launched your business under Marketable Mama, which I love the name. I love alliteration, of course. So, love the name. So how was that decision for you? Because I know and that's kind of the whole point of the podcast, right? This like lean out moment where you're like, I'm gainfully employed and now I'm just going to jump off the cliff and start my own business. Talk about that experience of making that decision.
Well, I definitely think the pandemic helped me to kind of push me into a position where I had to make a choice. But I wanted to make this choice, but I just needed a little push. So I was Marketable Mama. I had started it as a blog, in working in career services, and then also being a mom and having a really strong community of mothers that I know and had, at practices and pickups, I just naturally ask questions and get to know people. And so I was just constantly coming up with prompts for articles to write that could help the people that I was casually speaking to about work and life and et cetera. And so, and then that kind of grew into a mom friend telling a mom friend what I did. And then it was a little bit on a freelance spectrum at the time. And then I was also working at the outplacement firm. And so when the pandemic hit, the outplacement firm was obviously very busy. And then in my Marketable Mama kind of side hustle, I was getting really busy too, along with staying at home with my kids. And the teacher in me really came out during that time. And I wanted to use that as an experience to be with my children, but also teach them and come up with fun activities and lesson plans. And I just really got into that as well. So one thing had to drop. And so I paused with the outplacement firm and just really allowed myself to devote time and space to Marketable Mama. And it has been such a great experience ever since.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, I obviously we'll get into like what you do and how you do it and all that good stuff. The more of the details of your business, but I want to touch on something that obviously is top of mind, has been top of mind for a lot of folks because of the pandemic. I mean, I've heard numbers like, over 3 million women out of the workforce because of the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of that was distance learning requirements. I know even 2 of our Hera Hub locations, one in Sweden and one in Phoenix, had to close at the beginning of the pandemic because both women who were running those communities had 3 small kids at home and, had no other choice than to physically be home and distance learn with them. And so there's a lot of talk about how do we get women back into the workforce? How do we create an environment to get women back into the workforce and give them the opportunity to re-engage now that we're hopefully emerging from all this?
Mm-hmm. I think 2 things that are really broad and they can be customized in lots of different ways, but the 2 kind of buzzwords that I go to when I'm asked this question is number 1, flexibility, and being able to create an environment where a mom is seen as, or a working woman is seen as her whole person. And so, and those two things really work together. And also for women to be empowered so that they can advocate for flexibility and for being seen as the whole person that they are. So it's kind of like a give and take on both of the employer end, but also for women to tell their employer what flexibility they need. I think one thing that really is helpful to know about this, FlexWork did showed a statistic after a survey that the majority of companies have flexibility plans, but they're not set in stone. So they want to build out more flexibility, but they don't really know how. And so for women, if we can say, I need to work between these hours, I need this to be able to leave for this practice. I'm going to catch back up in the evening. I can work earlier in the mornings if there's, and then also for the, on the employer end, if there are questions that prompt these discussions, such as, what is an ideal working schedule look like for you? So I think the flexibility piece is really, really important. But also for there to be, I'm going to go into seeing the whole woman now, that there are employee resource groups, that there is support in the companies for women and working parents. I've started working as a coach for Village, which is a company that as they team up with companies to give working parents the support that they need as part of their benefits package. So I help employees with their career growth and development. And there's also lactation consultants, sleep consultants. So more things from the company to uplift these women that have been really just thrown under the bus it's been in the public eye for the last couple of years, but in my opinion, it's been going on long before that as well. So I think those two things, the flexibility and the company support of the whole woman are things that we can really do.
Absolutely. Awesome. Yes. So much has to change, and we've got to come out of this old way of doing things. We can thank the pandemic potentially for that, frankly. So I want to get into your business, of course. So career coaching, I know you help folks with their resumes, which is always the most difficult thing for people. It's like, we can write someone else's resume, but writing your own resume is like impossible. You help them with interviewing, workshops, help them with their LinkedIn profile. Talk more about exactly how you work. Is it always one-on-one? Do you do groups?
Mm-hmm. I do work one-on-one. I've moved towards a package concept. In the beginning, I was everything was kind of a la carte, and I felt like it was a disservice because in your job search and any sort of career transition or life transition, it is really hard to just look at one piece of it. So, for example, in your in a career transition and your job search, if you are just focusing on your resume and you have that one piece, but that's, there's still so much to it. You need to come up with a company target list. You need to, have a vision of what you do want to do. Networking is huge. Your LinkedIn profile is a cornerstone of our job search now, that it hasn't necessarily been in the past. So all of these things kind of work together. So that's why I moved into a package kind of concept. And so our first is 4 sessions. The first session, we are getting clarity about what you want your next step to look like. And the second one is really diving into your resume, your experience. And I just love this step. And I know you said that resumes are not a fan favorite, but I just get my little detective hat on and ask a lot of questions to pull out information that that most women don't think about. I mean, we go to work, we do our job, but we are not often thinking about the impact that we're making and the accomplishments that we have that have added value. So I love that session. And then the second goes into LinkedIn and networking. For especially moms, we have such an untapped bank of networking possibilities. So I love helping clients to see their circles of potential connections. And then our last is a mock interview, and that is really powerful, especially, for anyone, but especially those that have not had an interview in years. It can be a really big source of anxiety, but to go through it in a supportive atmosphere and get feedback and also do some reflection, it just helps you to feel more confident and prepared for an interview. So that is the format.
That's great. That's perfect. And negotiations, is that because this is women, are much, much less likely to negotiate in, a job offer situation. Do you get into that at all, or do you partner with others to help your clients?
100%. Salary negotiation is a huge soapbox of mine. I myself, and I know many other women have been in situations where we didn't negotiate. I didn't negotiate my salary in the beginning. And then it's hard to come up from a low spot or a low number. And so it can be really frustrating. It can hinder your engagement to your job. It can build resentment. So for all these reasons, it's so important to research, have a prepared plan, and really feel strong about advocating for yourself in salary negotiations. So 100%, I support that for my clients and build that into the interview prep session.
Great. Yeah, that's great, because it comes up or it should come up every time you get a job offer. Mm-hmm. And I am shocked at the statistics that women do not negotiate. It's like 70% of women don't even negotiate. I mean, it's shocking. And like 90% of men negotiate. I mean, it's just such a sharp difference between the genders. So I'm so glad that's part of what you do. Mm-hmm. Emily, I know you've worked with a lot of women, like you said, that have been out of the workforce for a while, right? I mean, and we see this a lot. Women will launch their business after their second child. And I've never been able to find like some, core research on this, but that's what I've seen over the last 11 years is oftentimes women will step out of the workforce, not after their first child, but after their second, to do something else or launch their own business. But if you're speaking to those women who have been out of the workforce for, 10 years, and I know you've worked with a lot of them, what are some just 1, 2, or even 3 short strategies that they can do to really rebuild their confidence? I mean, a lot of it is, yes, I mean, we need the resume and we need to pull that experience, that you have been working for 10 years. Like, how do we parlay that into LinkedIn and your resume? But what else can women do to build their confidence to get back in the workforce?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing that I want more women, working parents, and just people in general to know is that we aren't limited to just a full-time work or no work. A lot of women, especially after having children, they think, oh, okay, I have to make this choice. Am I going to be a working mom or a stay-at-home mom. And that is not necessarily those are not the only choices that we have. You can be a contract employee, you can freelance, there are returnship programs, there are you can be an entrepreneur. There are so many different part-time, there's so many different work options. So I think that is definitely my first piece of advice is kind of exploring your options and just being more aware of what you can do. The second is to have space for yourself. When you are a mom, it is very, very demanding, and this is kind of leaning into the fair play method. That
yes,
it's so
thank you. That was my next question. So perfect.
It is so important that we build a home infrastructure that creates space for moms to reconnect with themselves. It's so easy to get lost in all of the demands, both in the home and then also like societally, of what we are expected to do. But we need to make our own expectations, and we really need to advocate for space and time for ourselves, because that's when we get more clarity about what we want to do in our careers, and that's where we find fulfillment. And so I think that is my second piece of advice is know your options, and then also create some space for yourself to explore your interests, think about your work and what it looks like for you. Journaling is so powerful, and just really staying connected to who you are, and then also having a vision. So for moms, it's hard for us to think too far in advance because things are always changing and it's very fluid, but just having even a year or 2 years out, a vision of what might feel exciting to you, and then having little steps to work toward that.
Yeah, absolutely. So important, the work you're doing, Emily. I'm just, there's so many women that we encounter here at Harahub who are in that very position. We actually, a long time ago, like 9 years ago, in conjunction with Sony Electronics, the director of HR, we started a program called Experienceship. And it was an idea of an elevated internship specifically for folks that had been out of the workforce for over 5 years, at least over 5 years. And a lot of those were moms, that had stepped out of the workforce. And it gave them, they showed up at Harahub, they were assigned a company, a project, just 3-month project, work with that company. And it was such a success. Many of the company matches hired the person after 3 months. And even if they didn't find it a perfect fit, that person had 3 months of solid resume gap filling that they were able to put on with those skills with local companies and asking for, referrals and networking. And a lot of it is just getting up, like you said, and having your own space. I mean, that's one of the main premises of Harahub, right? It's like, get out of your home environment and get into a professional space with other amazing women, to have that space to yourself, to even have the time to journal. I mean, when you're at home, even if you have help at home, kids will find you no matter what closet you're hiding in, right? So yeah, it's such an important piece. And I would love to see somebody else run with that experience-ship idea, because I thought it was so impactful. And I'm still in touch with a lot of the women that went through the program. So
yeah, that sounds like such, I love that those types of programs. That has been we talked about the pandemic and its influence on working women, that more and more companies, because it was I mean, you couldn't ignore what was going on with women during the pandemic. So more and more companies are creating various ways and to on-ramp back into the workforce. And I think it's so important. And the thing that I like about the Experienceship and also returnships and just things of that nature is you're coming into a community of people that have also been out of the workforce for a while. And that is so empowering and so comforting. And because otherwise it can be a really scary place. There's a meme of Big Bird sitting in a meeting, and it's I think the caption is something about your first meeting, returning to work or something like that. And that's honestly, I mean, I've been there. How you feel, you're just feeling really out of place, all the lingo. And so to have a program that helps to just readequate you back into a professional setting is so empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, Emily, what are some of the things you're working on in your business this upcoming year? Do you have any new things that you're rolling out?
Well, I will say that Hera Hub and the workshops, they're constantly like, whenever my spark grows a little dim, it just really torches the flame. So I appreciate everything that I'm learning. So working with more women one-on-one is definitely at the top of my priority list. Writing career content. I have been just sprinkling articles through different channels, and that's really exciting. And then networking more and just learning more about women. I think that's just an important piece of what I do, and it's so fueling for me. So I definitely think that that's something that I want to keep doing in the next year.
Love it. Love it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Emily, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
My website is www.marketable-mama.com. And there are links in there to all of the social collateral, marketing collateral that I have, and then also links to set up an appointment to chat with me.
Fantastic. And I know you're active on LinkedIn too, so I'm sure folks can find you hanging out there.
Yes. I try to do a little Career Tip Tuesday on LinkedIn and on Instagram. So that's a steady flow of free, inspiring content to check out.
Awesome. I love it. To help if your flame has been dimmed. I love that phrase. I'm going to use that. That's great. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Emily. I've really enjoyed our chat today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.